There are several.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice. Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move the following motion. Whereas Section 1G of Section 41 of the Constitution of Jamaica requires members of this House of Representatives to vacate his seat if any firm in which he is a partner or any company of which he is a director or manager becomes a party to any contract with the government of Jamaica for or on account of the public service, or if he becomes a partner in a firm or a director or manager of a company which is a party to any such contract, and whereas the Member of Parliament for St. Andrew North Western is a shareholder of Carleen Smith and Company, which is a family-owned business, and whereas this entity may from time to time enter into contracts with the government of Jamaica and its affiliated agencies, and whereas the member has disclosed his interest in this entity, be it resolved that this motion be referred to the Ethics Committee of the House of Representatives for consideration and report. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take this motion.
Thank you, House Leader. Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move the Bauxite Production Levy Capital Development Fund Withdrawal Order 2025 Resolution. Whereas Section 12.1 of the Bauxite Production Levy Act, hereinafter referred to as the Act, establishes the Capital Development Fund. And whereas Section 12.5 of the Act provides that the Minister may from time to time, by order, direct that a sum specified in the order be drawn from the Capital Development Fund for such purposes and subject to such conditions as shall be specified in the order. And whereas Section 12.6 of the Act provides that every order made under Section 12.5 of the Act shall be subject to affirmative resolution of the House of Representatives. And whereas on the 7th day of November 2025, the Minister made the Bauxite Production Levy Capital Development Fund Withdrawal Order 2025 for the purposes of drawing $400 million from the Capital Development Fund for use in the implementation of Phase 8 of the Bauxite Community Development Program during the years 2025 to 2028. And whereas it is desirable that the Bauxite Production Levy Capital Development Fund Withdrawal Order 2025 be affirmed, now therefore be it resolved by this Honourable House as follows. This resolution may be cited as the Bauxite Production Levy Capital Development Fund Withdrawal Order 2025 Resolution. 2. The Bauxite Production Levy Capital Development Fund Withdrawal Order 2025, which was laid on the table of the House on the 11th day of November 2025, is affirmed. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion, notice of which was given. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. State Minister Whittle.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move the following motions. Be it resolved that the report of the Regulations Committee of the House of Representatives on its deliberations on the National Housing Trust Housing Benefit Special Selection Catherine Estates Housing Development Batch 1 Order 2025 and the report of the Regulations Committee of the House of Representatives on its deliberations on the National Housing Trust Housing Benefit Special Selection Industry Cove Manor Housing Development Order 2025 and the report of the Regulations Committee of the House of Representatives on its deliberations on the National Housing Trust Housing Benefits Special Selection Maysmore Flats Housing Development Order 2025, which were laid on the table of the House on the 11th day of November 2025, be approved. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take this motion.
Thank you. Questions and answers to questions? Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice, motions relating to the sitting of the House, motions for leave to introduce bills, presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained, public business. House Leader.
Madam Speaker, on the 14th day of October, I give notice in this Honorable House of private members Thank you very much. Thank you. Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion, notice of which I gave earlier.
House, the question is we suspend the standing orders to take the motion. Those in favor? Those against, the ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, I now move that the motion, notice of which I gave earlier, be approved.
The question is that the motion, notice of which was given earlier, be approved. Those in favor? Those in favor? Those against? Ayes have it. Minister Williams, Finance Minister.
Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion, notice of which I gave earlier.
Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Minister.
Madam Speaker, the Jamaica Bauxite Institute, JBI, was established by the Government of Jamaica in 1975 as a regulatory, planning, and development agency to manage the sovereign aspects of the government's participation in the bauxite alumina industry. The Bauxite Company Development Program was established in October 1996 with a mandate to promote long-term sustainable developments in communities affected by bauxite mining and alumina operations. Under the program, funding is provided for projects to generate employment and improve the social and physical infrastructure of communities. The program is administered by the JBI under the guidance of a steering committee comprising representatives of the JBI and the Portfolio Ministry, with each phase having a duration of between 2 and 3 years. Section 12 of the Bauxite Production Levy Act provides for the establishment of the Capital Development Fund and sets out the mechanisms by which withdrawals are made. In keeping with the provisions of the Act, a withdrawal order and resolution was drafted by the Office of Parliamentary Counsel to facilitate the withdrawal of $400 million from the Capital Development Fund for the purposes of implementing Phase 8 of the Bauxite Community Development Program. The Capital Development Fund currently has sufficient resources to facilitate the withdrawal of $400 million during the 2025-26 financial year. At July 31, 2025, the JBI reported a total of $13.1 million being held for the Bauxite Community Development Program following implementation of Phase 7 of the program. The Bauxite Community Development Program undertook 23 projects in Manchester, St. Anne, St. Elizabeth, St. Catherine, Clarendon, and generally across all bauxite parishes at a total cost of $110.4 million during the 2024-25 financial year. Additionally, 5 projects were undertaken at a cost of $28.93 million to date during the 2025-26 financial year. The requested support of $400 million from the Capital Development Fund is therefore necessary to allow the JBI to finance the implementation of Phase 8 of the Bauxite Community Development Program. These activities are geared towards strengthening livelihoods, enhancing community infrastructure, and supporting socioeconomic development across the bauxite parishes. Madam Speaker, it is proposed that a withdrawal of $400 million be made from the Capital Development Fund in line with the Bauxite Production Levy Act and Cabinet's Decision 23/25 dated June 16, 2025, granting approval for withdrawal and implementation of Phase 8 of the Bauxite Community Development Program during the 2025 to 2028 period. Madam Speaker, I now move that the motion, notice of which I gave earlier, be approved.
Thanks, Minister. Those in favor? Those. Oh, no.
Thank you. Wait to be recognized. I'm waiting to be recognized.
Member Warmington.
I'm waiting to be recognized by the Speaker. Now shut your mouth.
The member from South Manchester on the motion.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I couldn't allow this motion to be passed without speaking on behalf of the constituency that I represent, South Manchester. But Central is in a similar situation, so I can speak to both. He's here to speak for himself. Madam Speaker, this resolution speaks to extracting a sum of $400 million from the Capital Development Fund for use in the implementation of Phase 8 of the Bauxite Community Development Program over the years 2025, 26, 27, and 28. That's $100 million per year for all the constituencies that are affected by bauxite. Shut your mouth and listen. Madam Speaker, that 100 million a year is really an embarrassment. If that entire amount was used in South Manchester, it wouldn't begin to dent the work that needs to be done in that constituency. It's quite frankly inconsequential relative to the needs of these constituencies. And if I speak specifically to South Manchester, Madam Speaker, if you were to visit many communities that have suffered, that have endured bauxite mining for decades, Broadleaf, Harmons, Prattville, Asia, Perrins, Lancaster, some of these areas have been mined out and there are still pits unreclaimed decades after they have been mined. When you go in some of these communities, you could only describe the landscape as post-apocalyptic. And this is not because of the recent hurricane. This has been in that condition for decades. Right now, there are schools which are struggling to reopen in South Manchester. Still don't have power. Prattville Primary, Winston Jones. The billions that have been extracted from the immediate environs of these schools. In fact, to get to Winston Jones, Winston Jones is marooned. It's like an island and mined out all around the school. And yet they don't have a generator or a solar system that they can continue operating. The school has an agricultural department. They have hundreds of pounds of chickens that they've produced, which are at risk of spoiling because they have no electricity. And yet, billions have been extracted. Billions of dollars have been extracted and continue to be extracted from these areas. Billions in the US. The member from Western St. Andrew is correcting me. In law, the mined out pits are supposed to be reclaimed within a fixed period of time. What the companies appear to be doing is mining out about 95% or 97% of the bauxite. And they leave a little corner of the mined out pit. And they call it an open pit. They haven't finished it because there's a few truckloads left to be removed. And that seems to relieve them of the responsibility indefinitely, because some of those have been in that state now since 2010 and earlier. The JBI, which is being given this money to implement the program, behaves often as if they are an advocate for the industry, not an advocate for the communities that are impacted by bauxite mining. The mining, the Commissioner of Mines and the Department of Mines, which also has a role in terms of enforcing the appropriate regulations, they also seem to have been neutered. The benefits that the country gets from bauxite aluminum mining today is a trickle compared with what it was in its heyday. And I have made a recommendation in this House many times before, and this is not a partisan recommendation. This is coming from my perhaps unique experience of representing 3 different constituencies that are heavily impacted by bauxite alumina operations. Originally Southeast Clarendon, where the Jamalco plant is, then Central Manchester, where the Kirkvine plant is, and mining took place, and now South Manchester, which is literally honeycomb with bauxite alumina mining, with bauxite mining going to the alumina plant. This is an industry where we have not matched the expenses to mitigate the environmental damage with the revenues that the companies are earning. I have made a recommendation, Minister, before you had that responsibility, and I will repeat it now, that each ton of bauxite taken out, each ton of bauxite extracted, an amount of money should be put in escrow so that whatever happens down the road, there is money available for reclamation, for other environmental mitigation. I've never had, well, I've had responses that it sounds like a good idea. But I made that recommendation, I think, the first time in 2008. And we still haven't had any action in that regard. What we have today is an industry where there's not a lot of reinvestment taking place. In fact, there is huge exposure. There is huge exposure to communities in St. Ann, where lands have been taken, but persons have not been paid. Contractors are used for mining. Contractors are used for haulage. Contractors are used for loading at the plant. Labor contractors are used to provide casual labor. All of these payables amount to hundreds of millions of dollars. I discovered via questions in the Senate that Petrojam at one time was owed $8 million by one company. By one company. And there may be reasons why some people prefer not to hear what I'm saying. Because we know there are a lot of vested interests around. You know, so when you throw a stone in hog pen, the one that ball. So, Madam Speaker, I would say even in this time of the more transient crisis that has been brought on by Hurricane Melissa, even getting a response from the companies that are operating to assist the communities in this regard is very difficult. We had an allocation for trucking water, and I know that conventionally or usually the companies truck water in the communities where mining is taking place. I tried to reach out to the company to say, well, at least tell me what areas you are going to be covering so that we don't duplicate the trucking of the water and the little allocation can go as far as possible. Not even the courtesy of a response from the companies as the elected representative of the people. So, Madam Speaker, I believe we have to, this industry is in its twilight. And in a sense, they say it's you know, the last kick of a dying mule. is what you must be careful of. We need to be double our vigilance in terms of monitoring the environmental risks and the impact that these operations are having on our communities. It's not coincidental that when we look at the poverty surveys, these communities rank among the most or amongst the poorest of our communities. They should have been reflecting the benefits of the value that has been extracted out of this. And I say 400 million, 100 million Jamaican per year scattered across a number of affected constituencies. This is really an insult to the people, and I cannot support that.
The member from Manchester Northwest.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, through you, I'd like to ask the Minister of Finance a few questions pertaining to the order that she has brought to the House. Can the Minister say why it has taken 5 years for another constituency development project? This is Phase 8. Phase 7 was in 2020. And just by the Minister's admittance that this program is supposed to be every 3 to 4 years, why has it taken 5 years for constituencies that have been affected by bauxite to be seeing any resources, any at all? Secondly, can the Minister say if there will be an increase over the measly sum of $4 million that has been given to constituencies like Northwest Manchester every 3 to 4 years for projects financed through this program? Can the Minister also say which are the projects, that $1 billion that she mentioned in the last financial year, were these projects? Which communities, which constituencies were they done in, and how much was spent on each of these projects? Because I know constituencies like mine in Northwest Manchester saw no additional projects outside of the $4 million that was attributed to Northwest Manchester in 2020. And a member from South Manchester is saying that he saw none in southern Manchester also. And last question, will we be seeing the regular allotment to these constituencies and not when it is that the administration see fit that constituencies that have been affected by bauxite will see the regular flow of funds coming from the CDF?
Next is the member from St. Catherine.
Madam Speaker, I have no problem with the position taken by the member from South Manchester as it relates to reclamation by the bauxite companies. But I have a problem with the part of his presentation as it relates to the amount being allocated to those constituencies that have to do with bauxite. He spoke about 100 million per year over 3 years. But the issue is that the amount that's allocated to those constituencies is not to get 100 million divided per year. Is that the amount you get a chance to deal with that over 3 years, the procurement and the implementation of projects. He also said that it's an embarrassment and insult of 100 million per year. I must know what I'm talking about. I don't need no help from you. I am saying, just hear me first, man. Hear me first. Rastaman, just behave. I am saying, I didn't call a name. You can't call my name. It was a constituent. It was a Rastaman. But when it started, it was under Dr. Paul Robertson. And those constituents that they mined bauxite from got 2 million per year. Southwest St. Catherine got 1 million over that period, during the period when they got 2 million. It was former member Audley Shaw that increased the amount from 2 to 4. And the amount for countries like mine from 1 to 2. But remember, I was sat in cabinet over these years. He didn't advocate then for serious increase then. But now you find it convenient to ask it now. It's hypocritical. He made some good points in his presentation. But when he talk about the amount, bro, you just come back, that's why you don't understand. It's not a statement, minister, no. It's not a statement, minister. It's not a statement, you just come back, learn a little bit. So I'm saying, Madam Speaker, it's hypocritical for the member to criticize the amount. When he left here, was 2 million. He now comes back and comes back and is now 4 million. He never objected under Dr. Paul Robertson and his cabinet. But you know me tell the truth, Mikhail. You know me tell the truth. So I do disagree with him now. That it could have been increased or can be increased, but never criticized it under his government. So no criticize now.
The member from Southeast St. Anne.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Bauxite Mining Community Development Program. If you ask the people of Southeast St. Anne, that's a contradiction in terms. Because the constituency, as you've heard from the other members, not only the exploitative nature of mining, but the relationship between the companies and the citizens. There are places where, I tell you, as we speak, the noise, the dust, the roads that are unsafe for the people of the communities to use. And so when we talk about a community development program, it needs to be one that speaks to actually helping the people to be better as a result of mining. And that used to be the case because some of the communities in my constituency that were built in the 1970s, the Golden Groves, those communities were built on bauxite. What we're seeing now is that a lot of the communities, once the mining starts in the vicinity even of the communities, they begin to go south. They degrade. So, Madam Speaker, I speak not only for Southeast St. Anne, because I know my neighbor in Southwest has a very similar challenge. But I tell you that the open pits that have been there for many years, they are a risk to not only the farmers, but their livelihood. They don't have the land to use for production. They don't have the safety of moving around. They don't have the safety of the children being able to move freely in these communities because of the risk associated with these open pits. And so, yes, It's a risk to the people, to their health. And of course, the mining companies have tried to explain away why it is that they keep them open. In addition, Madam Speaker, much of the lands of Southeast St. Anne are controlled by or in the hands of mining companies, some of which have not been used, will never be used, but are not being made available for use by the people. And especially at this time, when we think about the role of agriculture and the need to increase productivity, I think it's high time that we think of a relationship that is going to be beneficial and truly develop the communities. And this funding that we're talking about, this money, is insufficient, not insufficient as a response. And so we should be thinking about what the relationship more broadly could be, including access to the assets of the companies for use in a developmental way in the communities. So I would like to ask of the Minister as well, have we assessed the effect of mining on communities? Is there any cost-benefit analysis done? And if so, could you share? If not, can you commit to doing one in order that we truly understand what this industry is doing to our communities? In terms of the projects which you speak of, which have been done over the past phases, have they been assessed? And similarly, what returns, what effect have they had on the communities? Madam Speaker, in order for us to really serve the communities and develop them, we need to rethink how mining is taking place. I get calls and messages from Taylor Corner, where the ponds that are set aside for the animals have been filled up with the silt that runs off from the mining areas into the communities. And their appeal to the mining companies oftentimes falls on deaf ears. And as you heard from my colleague member, sometimes not even the MP gets a response, let alone members of the community. And so if we're able to get it right, I think this could work to the benefit of communities. But as it stands right now, it is not serving, it is not doing justice to our communities. I thank you.
Thank you, member. The member from St. Elizabeth Southwest.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as the matter that is before the House directly touches and concerns matters under my portfolio, I thought it important to speak on the motion, especially in relation to the need now for the allocation, as has been said by some members, for the Bauxite Community Development Program to be able to continue. Clearly, Madam Speaker, I have heard the various members who represent mining constituencies, and I want to assure them that all of the concerns that they have raised, whether it be in relation to the mining sector in general or in relation to the Bauxite Community Development Program, is something that I will take on board. And I will also commit to having a meeting with all the members of Parliament who represent mining communities so that we can fetter out some of these challenges that they continue to have. Because I believe ultimately we have the same mission and vision for the most part, which is to ensure that these mining communities see real benefit from mining in our country. Madam Speaker, I think it's important as we reflect on the motion. I know it is easy to speak about the bauxite industry as it is now, and at least the member from Southeast St. Anne did speak about the gains that we have had over the years from the bauxite industry and from our mining sector. And I believe we must not leave that behind, because the reality, there are a number of communities, towns that were built through our bauxite and mining industry, a number of schools, community centers that were built through our bauxite industry, Mandeville as we know it, St. Elizabeth Technical as we know it, Manchester High School as we know it. All of these are legacies from our mining bauxite sector. So yes, there are issues that we have in relation to some of the environmental challenges, but the reality is that a number of our towns, a number of our families were employed, have been employed, and have seen real benefit from the mining sector. In fact, even as we speak, the mining sector still pays the highest average salary to workers in our country. And when we think that mining is no longer important, when our tourism dollars went with COVID-19, it is the mining sector that held up our export earnings and kept us afloat. And I think even as we levy some of the criticism, that some of it is justified, that we put it in full context. Even if we speak about one company owing $8 million, that which was subsequently paid, it again speaks to how important that business is for Petrojarm as an entity of the government. So the reality is that bauxite and mining in general is still important, but I do agree that there are some things that have happened in the past that we have to put a stop to. So as Minister of Mining, I have said that the mining companies are to, that the Commissioner of Mines is to take a zero-tolerance approach in relation to the rehabilitation of pits, so that there is no new pit added to the backlog, and that we are to start urgently treating with the fees that are to be collected in relation to the backlog, and to ensure that the companies treat with the backlog of pits. One company at least has started that process, and we have sent out letters, the Commissioner has sent out letters, and that is my clear position. Because unless the pits are repurposed for use in agriculture, and I will speak to that, but they should be filled in keeping with the legislation. We are also going to be doing a review, have started a review in relation to the specifications for rehabilitation. Because I've heard from enough persons and farmers that when the land is rehabilitated, enough topsoil is not there, so it makes it very difficult. And we plan to come to the House with changes to that regime. So I want to assure the members, and again, when we sit and meet, I will take some of your suggestions to see how in changing that regime, we can come to some common place. I do find, in general, the comments on the JBI a little unfortunate, right? I do appreciate that they have a balancing act, because they do act as the entity that provides scientific research, that provides some level of direction, guidance, especially in relation to the question of reserves for our bauxite industry, while also leading the charge on community development. But I think there is enough work that has been done under this program that people can say that good work has happened. So whether it be the Broadleaf Health Center that was rehabilitated, whether it be the fact that we now have a model in the world for how you repurpose former bauxite lands, and that model is by establishing greenhouse clusters, which we've done in multiple places, including Blue Mountain, Rose Hill, and Content, all of those in Manchester. And the Content cluster is so well renowned that when the president of the World Bank visited Jamaica, the first place he went to was to visit the farmers in Content. Because what the JBI has done in Content is to establish a cluster of greenhouses using farmers who used to farm on that land, probably about 40 farmers. Each now has their own greenhouse. Clearly they use communal activities to do pruning, things of that nature, and utilize the ponds. Instead of filling the ponds, put in pond liners and then get the water, retain the water, and use that water to drive the greenhouse cluster. One of the things that we want to do in this allocation is to rapidly expand that into more parts of St. Anne, I heard the member from Southeast St. Anne, both Southeast and Southwest. We have a model now that we can rapidly expand. And just to tell you, to put it in perspective, after Hurricane Beryl, when we went up to that content cluster, they had taken down their plastic that covered the greenhouses. So they were able to quickly get back up and running. And they were the primary source of sweet peppers, cherry tomatoes in that Christmas season, making a lot of money. And again, because they had the ponds and they had the water. They've also done, under the development, tablets in schools programs. They have rehabilitated schools. One of the things that I said last year, and some of the members would not be here, we want to embark on bigger projects. We have set a target that none of these bauxite communities should be without piped water. And that is one of the things that we want, that none of these bauxite communities should be without piped water. It is a travesty that over the years, these communities have gone without pipe water while the industry does use a lot of water. So we have a project already in Manchester. It may be in South. I think it is in South. I'll speak to you about it, right? That we're working with the companies to put in the pipes from some of this money to get pipe water into those communities. And what we want to do in all of the areas, identify these communities, and again, tap into the bauxite, tap into the Capital Development Fund. So I say this to say, this 400 million, clearly, is part of our regular drawdown. But I have already, and the minister, I think I can go as far as said, has agreed that we should look at two things. One, some of these capital-intensive projects, which this 400 million may not be able to support, and do a pull-out in relation to that in our bauxite communities. So we may be coming very soon with another order. And additionally, I have said to the minister, and the minister agrees, that for our post-Melissa recovery, some allocation should also come. And as such, we're putting an appropriate submission together to pull down some more to help our bauxite communities in that regard. The two more things that I will say quickly. I agree, just in general, that one of the reasons that mining is now with agriculture is to move more of those lands into agriculture, right? And I tell you that we already have the model. Additionally, the member who spoke from Northwest Manchester can be assured that program in this 400 million is an increase in the allocation to members of parliament, right? That is program, and yes, you will have a regular allocation, right? So you will have timely, you will know when, so that you can plan for it. It was something that the member raised the last time, and I had assured him that we will get it done. The last thing I will say is that clearly, as we continue to manage, as we continue to look at how do we balance the critical economic impact from mining with the challenges that our communities may have, we're about to unveil a mobile application that will allow members of the community in real time to complain of issues they're having with these companies. Not just bauxite, speak a lot about bauxite, but we do have issues sometimes with sand mining. We do have issues sometimes with limestone mining. And as such, we're going to use the technology, and you will hear more about that. So I rise to support the motion. Clearly, it is critical, as the member has said. It's something that we would have wanted even before. So now that it is before us, I believe, one, that we should move quickly to have the allocation done. Let us have our meeting, and we'll pull you in as we go back to the Ministry of Finance to get some of these bigger projects done, and definitely some post-Melissa recovery. Thank you, Speaker.
Member from St. Catherine Northwest.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. St. Catherine Northwest is the home of the Windalco bauxite plant. And while I heard of the multiplicity of things the bauxite industry may have contributed in its very long history, and none of us in Northwest St. Catherine could claim that there is no benefit to bauxite. It is a chief employer of most persons in Northwest St. Catherine, and as far as the multiplier effect is extensive. However, this bill before us that states $4 million for each MP, I believe, Madam Speaker, is evidence to each constituency, to each bauxite affected constituency. Yes, the amount is. Yes, we know what it is. Yes, we know what it is. Yeah? Yes. But it's allocation of 100 million, and I want to be very open so that my constituents don't believe that we have 100 million. That is 100 million to all, divided among all of them. And to that extent, simple mathematics would suggest that if there's any equity, it's no more than $4 to $5 million per person. To that extent, Madam Speaker, I think it proves that there is no real plan for life after bauxite. It has been indicated that bauxite should have between 10 and 15 years left of effective and efficient production. And we have the history and evidence of life after banana. We have the history and evidence of life after sugarcane. And we see how the suffering had come to those communities that were once dependent for employment and activity. We see in this plan no industry development proposal. We have not seen a life after bauxite plan being put forward for any community. I have not seen it for Northwest St. Catherine, and I am not sure if the other MPs have seen one, but there is no such plan for us to say we are going into this replacement industry. We are going into this replacement activity. And to that extent, it seems as if we are running full speed into the abyss with no plan for the people that are currently directly dependent on the bauxite industry. Indeed, Madam Speaker, we have seen without any conversation the end of what the public call dust money, the contribution to the community due to the nuisance of the dust from bauxite. I see the minister is a little engaged at this point, but this dust money that used to come to the communities have ended with no conversation to the communities where they would get a quarterly contribution for the dust nuisance that would come from it. In Northwest St. Catherine, we know that the bauxite industry have robbed us of the river. Multiple slates of pollution coming into the river that has caused for not only the economic viability of fishing, but the recreational activity of swimming. I have not. Madam Speaker, I'm asking for your protection.
Members, the member is asking you to allow him to speak. While on his feet, he should be heard.
Madam
Go
Speaker.
ahead, member from St. Catherine West.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, we have been robbed of our rivers. The constant pollution has caused for the habit of recreation in our rivers to end because persons have identified the probability of pollution in the river. We have the caustic pollution. We have seen on multiple occasions the fish kills within the same spaces that we have not been able to benefit from. Madam Speaker, We have also seen where a lot of agriculture are not conducive to the space because especially vegetables suffer under the dust created by the bauxite plant. I speak as well for a school called Charlemont High School that is in direct proximity to what is called the Mud Lake. And at Charlemont, listen, I win by nearly 3,000, so you can talk to me when I get closer. Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, Charlemont High School have reported a multiplicity of reports of breathing problems among their children. And to that extent, we have not seen that level of investment coming from bauxite. Let's give an example, Madam Speaker, of a place with the production of bauxite. We have no clinic in Louidersville of any worth. The clinic in Louidersville falling apart. We have no clinic in Treadways, not falling apart, non-existent, in Treadways. The clinic in Linstead, has been asking for a dressing table to dress wounds that come to that clinic. This is a bauxite community. So with all of the conversations of how great this bauxite is, the limited interface that we have seen suggests to me that the bauxite industry is not playing a satisfactory role in the space. I join my colleague from St. Anne about a hidden problem with the bauxite industry. While it is that many a farmer is robbed of the areas that were mined, the ownership of the bauxite industry of other lands not mined and not being able to be utilized has robbed our communities of economic and housing opportunities because they hold them dear to simply ownership. These are not mined out. You know, the bauxite, leave me alone. Madam Speaker, of course, we want to focus on the rehabilitation of the mined out lands. Of course, we want to find usage of mined out lands. But I say to you, Madam Speaker, that there is no way we could claim that 14, 15, 20 greenhouses could be a legitimate plan of replacement for 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 dependent individuals on that thing. A more extensive development. And while, Minister, not criticizing that start. What I'm saying is that I can identify thousands of acres not being mined but under ownership of the bauxite that they have not allowed for usage. And it is creating in some of our constituencies a facilitator of criminal activity through squatting on these lands. Right? And also, through non-utilization. Additionally, no, I lost there by 200 votes. Additionally, Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, I join the member from South Manchester about the lack of coordination and facilitation of the bauxite industry towards the people's representatives as member of parliaments in the area. It is not unusual that the bauxite industry would give scholarships and without knowledge of whom they gave the scholarships to, that the member of parliament office double dip with those individuals, and regardless of requests, that has never been granted, neither to us nor our requests sent to them for that to be done. They give no consideration to the people's representatives. Madam Speaker, the rust of the roofs caused by the dust from the bauxite cannot be replaced by the limited contributions that are being given. If we should give 10 sheets of zinc, 6 pieces a lot, and 2 pounds a nail, that's $52,000. This amount might give 80 individuals a contribution. Any bauxite community, in particular those in the production communities, the caustic is causing extensive damage to roof, extensive damage to crop, and extensive damage to furniture. I don't know of the lifestyle. Madam Speaker, I hope the minister can also imply and indicate to us how much money is currently owed to the Treasury by these bauxite companies. It is our information that quite a bit is still owed to the government by these bauxite companies. And we'll also like to know for how long this has been owed, because this is a key indicator as to why we are not benefiting sufficiently from the bauxite plant. I welcome the statement from the minister that no bauxite entity or constituency community should be without water. I know piped water. I know that Windalco have its own well, for example, and we hope that as a part of its contribution to the community, that Windalco will consider in a more permanent way to provide for that into our constituencies. So we are happy that this is before us, but we are concerned that what is being granted through an institution is not sufficient to plan for life after bauxite, nor to mitigate the negatives, the cost of the negatives that the bauxite industry has created. With that, Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Minister.
Madam Speaker, just to answer a few of the questions from the members. The member from Northwest Manchester asked about the various phases, and member, you will recall